Joining us once again for the interview is the top Democrat in the United States Senate, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York. Senator Schumer, thank you for sticking with us. The Trump administration has unified control of Capitol Hill and the White House. They have passed no significant legislation since President Trump was sworn in, despite their almost heroic efforts to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Are they going to pass a tax bill?
Well, they're going to have a rough time, mainly because the bill is so warped towards the very wealthy, the big corporations, and they want to do so much, it's greed, that they have real trouble. And they're stuck, on the one hand, to pay for the tax breaks for the wealthiest and particularly for the biggest corporations, who, by the way, don't pay a 35% actual tax. The average, the top 1,000, I believe it is, pay 16%. But that they are stuck. They have to eliminate deductions that the middle class needs. That's very unpopular, and it's unpopular particularly in their districts, sort of middle class, upper middle class, suburban districts. If they eliminate those deductions, the deficit goes way up, and there are, to their credit, a handful of Republicans in the Senate who still believe in reducing the deficit. The hard right, total fraud, phoniness, fraudulence. They were against deficits whenever President Obama would want to spend money on anything. But now there are huge tax cuts which raise the deficits much greater. That's perfectly okay.
Do you think that
So I think they have a rough road to hoe, and we're going to do everything to stop them for two reasons, Rachel. One, we have two big problems in America. One is income maldistribution. The top is earning so much. This will make it even worse. Even worse. And second, the only way we can get middle-class people and people trying to get into the middle class out of doing better, keeping those who are there in it, getting those up, is government. It's education. It's road building. It's scientific research. If you create deficits like this, it'll all be decimated, and they might have to cut Medicare and Medicaid.
When you say that you're not sure they're going to be able to pass it, they could pass it with their own votes.
And they're pulling, yes, they've rejected any bipartisanship. We could do some bipartisan things, but they've rejected that completely.
There's been no Democratic involvement in the bill at all?
None. Well, their view of bipartisanship is they get in a closed room, they come up with a bill, and then say, you support it. And that's bipartisanship. And I'll say one other thing. They are so embarrassed about this bill. It's so, the hard right, which is running the show for the first time, is so far away from what Americans want. That's why health care failed, and hopefully that's why this will fail. So what they're trying to do is rush it through. Not one hearing on this major, major bill affecting our whole economic system, our tax code. No discussion, no analysis by outside experts. They introduced it today. They want to start marking it up, doing amendments Monday. So they're afraid. They're embarrassed. I call this bill a dead fish. The more it's in the sun, the more it stinks. They don't want people to know about it.
Are there red state Democrats or conservative Democrats who are potentially going to vote for this thing?
Well, we had 45 Democrats sign a letter that said we had three principles, very simple, easy principles. No tax breaks to the 1%. Don't blow a huge hole in the deficit. And don't do reconciliation. Do it bipartisan. 45 signed it. There were 3 who didn't. But if you listen to those 3 and what they say, they agree with our principles. They just didn't want to sign the letter.
So that's Heitkamp and Donnelly and Manchin.
Joe Manchin has been eloquent about the deficit, which he really cares about. So I think we're going to have the same unity. I'm hopeful. Each person will make their own decision. But I'm hopeful we'll have the same unity on this that we had on health care. It was our unity on health care that helped sink it.
On the New York part of this, actually, a New York question here. I think New York is a particularly important state when thinking about the politics of this tax plan. There are 9 Republican members of Congress from New York. New York is the kind of states, mostly blue states, that will be particularly hurt by this tax plan. People who get places that have relatively high housing costs, for example. Those are the kinds of places where working families are going to get killed.
Those tend to be Republican districts, suburban districts. Peter King, to his everlasting credit, has taken this on. His district will get killed. The fella out on the 1st District, Lee Zeldin. Now, he's a Trump guy, but he's opposed this because he knows what would do in his district. I went around the state, and actually, I don't like to do this, but I named names. I said, Congressman so-and-so and so-and-so, they would be betraying New York. by voting for this, going for the hard right, wealthy people. And 7 of the 9 voted against the budget. And so I have called the governors, Democratic governors of the 8 or 9 other states, California, Colorado, Virginia, Pennsylvania, where you have a lot of these districts, and asked them to do the same. And they're in the process of doing it. So the Republicans, particularly those from the suburban districts, particularly those who tend to be a little more mainstream, not hard right, are squirming. And they're going to be damned either way. If they vote against it, they will have their right-wing leadership mad at them. But if they vote for it, they face real electoral problems. They're really hurting their constituents in a very big and real way.
Let me ask you another.
So I think we have a good shot. I think we have a good chance of defeating it, and I hope for the sake of the country, forget the politics, that we defeat it. It would blow a hole in the deficit. For a decade, we couldn't do things we need to do to rebuild this country, and it would make income distribution even worse, bad enough as it is now, taking money away from middle-class people and giving it to the wealthiest and these big corporations. And one more thing, I'm sorry, this myth that if you give these corporations tax cuts, they'll create jobs, is utter bull. They are stocked with money now. They're not putting it into jobs, stock buybacks, corporate salary, corporate salaries for the high end, dividends. They don't use it for jobs. It's a myth. And what we're up against, this is the one thing that, I am fighting hard in this job, and I'm enjoying it, actually. I didn't know I would enjoy it as much as I did. But they have a machine. And they have these think tanks and these professors they pay college, and they perpetrate utter bull. So the newspaper, even the mainstream newspapers, well, maybe it will create jobs, maybe it won't. It won't.
Senator Schumer, I have one more thing to ask you about.
You can ask me whatever you want,
now I got you all
Rachel.
fired up about taxes. We'll be right back with Senator Chuck Schumer in New York.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.